Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper-Leitch. You are listening to the live broadcast of Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and of course, iHeartRadio and timeforhemp.com. I want to say thank you to KDK Distributors for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong, and remind people that we are no longer just 1 hour a day of broadcast. We are a group of people who are bringing you over 60 hours a week of original content about the need to end prohibition. Joining our team sometime within the next 2 weeks, we're already set for the date, will be Joe Grumbine. He starts his show on the 14th. And on the 15th, Muck Sticky starts his show. And next Tuesday, Drew West begins a program on the network. And we're trying to get the Japanese show up and going. They're having technical problems on getting the programming edited, so we're still working on that. But we have constant new programming being added to the network each month. Do make it a point to tune in and share us with your friends. It is Wednesday. Wednesday is Leap Day, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Go to leap.cc and find yourself a speaker to help educate the minds in your neck of the woods. And remember, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world pack their bongs, their pipes, their vaporizers, and their joints and take time for hemp. It is Wednesday. My joint host today is Peter Chris, and our joint guest today is Diane Goldstein. And golly jeepers, golly, how are things changing? Are we just about ready to have that big bear hug in front of the Washington Monument with the DEA? Are we going to be holding hands, singing Kumbaya with Eric Holder and friends?
Well, maybe not tomorrow. But, and I don't know if any of those names will still be on the planet when we finally get around to that point. But eventually we'll get there. I mean, who knows? Before too long, we might even give women the right to vote, you know?
Hey, yeah, there's an idea.
I only mention that because it's another profoundly stupid policy that we did for 150 years in this country, and we never should have done, and that's the same thing with this prohibition. But the beat goes on. Diane Goldstein, retired lieutenant from Redondo Beach Police Department. Welcome aboard again.
Hey, Peter. Hey, Casper. It's always my pleasure to be on one of my favorite and funnest radio shows. So I think lots of interesting things going on. I wanted to chat about, there was an article out here in California about a local physician who was indicted and pled guilty to Medi-Cal and fraud charges. And what was interesting, what he was doing, it surrounds the issue of mislabeling kids as being drug addicted, and so he defrauded Medi-Cal for, millions of dollars. But what was probably the worst part of this is that what they did is they took kids who were most at risk, so they were kids in the foster care system or kids who were attending, middle school and high school and continuation schools, and they labeled them whether or not they actually had a drug addiction. So for the white kids, they labeled them as having alcohol problems, and for the African American and the Hispanic kids, they labeled them as having marijuana problems. So once again, you go back to the issue of the pervasiveness of how the drug war in its entirety has corrupted so many of our systems.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, I think that a lot of the corruption comes from the futility of the policy. And what I mean by that is when you work in this, no matter what aspect, law enforcement, treatment, whatever, after a while you see the absurdity of the things that we are doing to people. You are seeing the fact that it doesn't work at all. And then you see a chance to make some money on top of it. Come on, we are human beings. We tend to succumb to these kind of temptations.
Yeah, but you know what was really interesting about this case? It's not just that, but what had happened is not only did they mislabel these kids based on their race, and their ethnicity, which is horrific in and of itself,
right?
But they labeled these kids as drug addicts despite them not having a problem.
Right.
And so it again goes back to someone basically recognizing, number one, I can make a lot of money, but looking at these kids who were most at risk and not caring how this labeling of them in an educational system can contribute to them furthering that school to prison pipeline.
Well, there is nothing in our policy that it makes room for compassion. I mean, for normal things that you would expect from people in these kind of jobs, that they would be caring about people and stuff like that. There's no room for that. And again, I always tell people how important the words we use are. When Nixon kicked off that drug war term, and we started calling this a war on drugs, that allows for looking at the people that we are dealing with as being our enemies. They have to be destroyed. And it sets a whole different mindset in people's head on how they deal with people. We're seeing that across the law. We talk often about the militarization of police, and it comes directly from this policy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, so what's going on in New York? We can talk about medical marijuana being accepted in New York now, except with a ban on smoking.
Yeah, right. And they don't, no allowed smokable or whatever. I guess I don't know what they're doing. I don't think they know what they're doing. They're trying to find some way around this thing so it looks like they're actually not doing anything. I guess what makes marijuana bad is because you smoke it.
Yeah, which again is Como ignored a lot of the science, and although a lot of the studies have been limited, where you actually have smoked marijuana, for some people is they can use it as a better indicator on how to moderate their dosage, or that smoked marijuana in fact has shown to be highly efficacious with regards to Crohn's disease. There's an Israeli study that was concluded years ago on that.
It's interesting when you say that, because it's the smoking of marijuana thing. Everybody has done this. You get stuck at work late. You're supposed to go to a party after work, and you get there like about 45 minutes late. So you start having drinks to catch up, and before you know it, you're blotto because you drink about 4 more than you normally would have, because you don't feel them until about a half an hour after you drink the first drink. The thing about smoking a drug is you instantly get the impact of the drug to your brain. And it gives people much easier way to moderate their use and stuff like that. So it would almost seem like it's contrary to what they're trying to accomplish. The thing I would like, if I was in front of the governor, the first question I would ask him is, now that he agrees with them, what exactly changed in the last 20 years that made him change his mind? Because as far as I know, it's the same marijuana now that it was 20 years ago. It's the same information we had about marijuana that we had 20 years ago. How come now all of a sudden it seems like a good idea?
Yep. So, times are changing. And, I think that there are many positive things that we continue to see and to move forward. And opening up some of the research is going to help. I know that the DEA has asked the FDA to retake a look at whether or not marijuana should be a Schedule 1. I don't have much hope because I'm not necessarily sure I trust the FDA, despite the DEA asking them to take a scientific look at it. But I think, we take steps forward and then we take steps backward. Yesterday's daily outrage is Dr. Sue Sicily, who is with the university, or was with the University of Arizona, and with MAPS, Rick Doblin's research group, just got terminated from University of Arizona. And largely, I would tell you that is based on the politics of pot and has nothing to do with her competency level. So Dr. Sicily recently achieved, notable progress in research because she was conducting a PTSD and marijuana study that was approved by NIDA, approved by the FDA, and she was at the level of, in fact, the last hurdle she needed to reach was to obtain marijuana in order to do the controlled studies. University of Arizona had accepted it out of their medical school. She's a psychiatrist. But one of the things that happened is one of the legislators in Arizona, a conservative female by the name of Yee, did not want state money to be used for the research, and Dr. Sicily was advocating, working within the system, really clearly is using her First Amendment rights to be political. And there was I can't remember which activism organization that she was not part of, started a recall against Yee. And Dr. Sicily, I believe, was fired because of the alleged affiliation between her and other marijuana drug reform groups in Arizona.
They just keep reaching and reaching and reaching, don't they?
Oh, it's horrible. And the problem with this is that her study, I think, really, really was going to be important because it was one of the first studies that has already shown the efficacy of marijuana in the treatment of severe PTSD. And by her being terminated, what that's going to do, it's going to put the study back by 2 years. And it's going to destroy her reputation. What other public, university or research institution is going to want to hire her?
It's interesting. That's obviously going to happen. You mentioned before about the FDA asked the DEA to reconsider the scheduling of marijuana.
No, the DEA asked the FDA.
FDA to reconsider. Okay, yeah. I just want to get that clear.
Well, no, so the DEA is asking the FDA to do the research.
Right.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about, I don't know if you know this, but this is the first year that I've ever made a prediction. And I made a prediction in January. And that prediction was that by the end of this year, marijuana will be off of Schedule 1. And the reason I'm saying that is I think the government sees it as a lost cause. And I think they understand, finally, they're starting to get to the medical aspects of this thing. And they can completely remove these marijuana people from this movement by simply moving it to Schedule 2 and making it legal. And that will allow them to focus the drug war on the other stuff. And it'll take marijuana, which an argument that they're losing, out of the discussion. And so that was my prediction. And this, when you mentioned that the DEA is asking the FDA to look this over again, this may be the beginning of that change.
Well, I think part of that, too, is that they're starting to recognize from the success that the state of Washington and the state of Colorado are having with the sales and the tax and the different revenues they're getting from selling the licenses and establishing the dispensaries, that there's a huge chunk of change that can be brought into the coffers to help cover the expenditures of running the cities and the counties and the states. And as you said, they're losing. I mean, how many times can you walk out your front door and say that marijuana has no medical value, that it's a waste of our time to be growing it for industrial purposes, that farmers should not have it, and that it makes children sick when they smoke it, when constantly you have Google yelling in your eyes and you have researchers from around the world giving information to the public through the new forms of media that contradict you. How many times can you walk out your door and say the sun does not shine at noon, the stars don't shine at night, before people look at you and say you're a lying idiot?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? You're right. It's really interesting. I've had some kind of long back and forth Twitter commentaries with Kevin Sabet and people from Project Sam. And so one of the things that they're going to be alleging in the future, so for example, is what they don't understand is that all crimes that are reported to the National Standard for Crime Reporting to the FBI is called the Uniform Crime Report, the UCR. The UCR is based on Part 1 crimes, so there's this standardized level so people can understand what type of crime affects their communities. Well, what they've been screaming about is that crime is actually up because of marijuana legalization, despite the police department's reporting that no, crime is actually down. So their new tangent and target is they're going to start putting out reports about things like how many arrests have been increased for public intoxication since marijuana has been legalized. And I think that's just so disingenuous because we've never looked at alcohol in that fashion. We never report to the public how many times we arrest someone for being drunk in public or under the influence in public. In California, there's a section called 647F of the Penal Code, and I'm sure in New York, Peter, you had something similar, where you could take someone into custody for 6 hours who was so intoxicated that they were a danger to themselves and others. But what happened with this arrest, it was literally just taking someone in a jail, putting them in a cell with all the other drunks so they would sober up for 6 hours. And then you'd release them, and they would never go to court. And they would only end up in court if they were such a public health issue, like our chronic homeless people, that we would then try to certify them into some type of public health facility. And so they're grasping at those type of stats now to show what a problem marijuana legalization has been. But what they're going to ignore is that we don't criminalize those people. It's for protection. And you know what? There are times that in law enforcement, those types of arrests are also are attitude arrests. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Sometimes it's kind of like the last bottom line straw, and they've been abused as well. But that's not an indication of public disorder in your community.
So we used to have a law in New York State called the public intoxication law. And it made domestics a lot easier because all you had to do was lure the drunk out into the public, and then you could lock them up for public intoxication.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We gotta take a commercial break here and pay our bills. That's the law of our budget. And then we're going to listen to a song about how fantastic marijuana is and come back and take a whole lot more with my dogs and myself and my joint host and my joint guest. Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF medical clinics are the premier physician's clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
In need of a ganja vacation? Blaze away.
Don't criticize it.
Hotbox Jamaica. Chill. Relax and burn all day while watching the amazing ocean view. Listen to the birds. Bathe in the mineral waters of the Ganja River. Munch on tasty Jamaican Rasta food. Take a weed farm tour and hold a meditation. Book this amazing vacation for $420. Get the Sativa Special. 7 nights in Sativa dorms with ganja meals and airport transfer. Check us out at hotboxjamaica.com. That's hotboxjamaica.com. Hotbox Jamaica, a higher meditation vacation.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com. Or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.
Uno, dos, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right to the point and roll me a joint, the marijuana polka. Find me a dove and we'll call it love, the marijuana polka. Flick me your mitt and we'll get off real quick, the marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. Now roll me a smoke, yeah, give me a toast, the marijuana polka. Lock up the doors and we'll wax up the floors, the marijuana polka. Yeah, give me a line and we'll dance all night, the marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. back your lid. Now don't keep it in. The marijuana polka. Come sing along and we'll load up the bomb. The marijuana polka. I roll up some caps and watch for the cops. The marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. Señorita, sí, sí, señorita, sí, sí. La marijuana polka. Federales, oh no, federales, oh no. La marihuana polka. Tequila es bien, panocha también. La marihuana polka. Mi linda y yo somos bichatos. La marihuana polka. Borrachos, borrachos, míranos, todos borrachos. Señorita, sí, sí, señorita, sí, sí. La marihuana polka. Federales, oh no, federales, oh no. La marihuana polka. Tequila es bien, la noche también. La marihuana polka. Mi linda y yo somos bichatos. La marihuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana, the marijuana, the marijuana polka.
You are listening to Time for Hemp live all around the world on timeforhemp.com, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and of course, iHeartRadio. Had this been a television broadcast, you would have watched me doing the can all around the apartment the last 3 minutes, kicking my heels up and just dancing a storm because I love that song so much. Who knew that we could do a marijuana polka and make it so rockin'? Wow. With that said, it's Wednesday. It's Leap Day, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And jeepers, I'll tell you, Wednesday is one of my favorite days. I'm always in a good mood, for one. I got Peter Criss as my joint host. Great guest from Leap on the program to help inform the audience about why we need to end prohibition. And oftentimes the night before, America's Got Talent's been on TV. That's my reason to live. Those of you who know me well. If it wasn't for America's Got Talent, I'd have no reason to get out of bed. Jeepers. But now that it's on TV again, I'll tell you, I am just one happy camper. If you agree with that, then you have 1 hour a day, 1 hour a week, no, 2 hours a week to do nothing but watch TV. And the rest of the time, you better be trying to end prohibition and making the world a better place around you. Done with my rant, Peter Criss. Look, Diane, I'm fed up with the police thinking that they're someplace in Iraq and that they need to get a sniper team to come over and serve a warrant and bring out 4 tanks just to let the neighbors know that I've got a traffic ticket and we need to appear in court. And now I'm finding out from reading some of the material from the ACLU that there are even some states you shouldn't even consider moving to because of everything's becoming corporate and what's going on is nobody's business, eh?
You know, it's so interesting. The ACLU just came out with a really good year-long study that they did, Freedom of Information request. I can't remember on how many different SWAT teams. It wasn't all of the nation, but it was like a significant amount. And one of the things that they found, which is exactly what we know, is, let's label it kind of that military term, which is called mission creep. So our SWAT teams originally were designed around a purpose. They were supposed to go after are offenders that exhibit the highest level of violence, hostage situation, bank robberies, real. They were set up to save lives. It was a really good purpose, and I'm a big supporter of SWAT teams if they're used right. But as we've seen the drug war escalate, what you have seen is the mission creep of SWAT teams has evolved into now predominantly what they do is they serve search warrants in the drug war. So that was one of the things that this study validated, which was great. And there's been other peer-reviewed scientific academic research that has been done on that. But one of the very interesting things in Massachusetts, for example, they have, it's called the Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, which is a group of 58 police and sheriff's departments in 2 counties. And when they received their Freedom of Information request from the ACLU, what they told the ACLU is that their SWAT teams didn't have to hand over any records to the ACLU because they are part of a private law enforcement council, despite all their agencies being taxpayer funded. And so, it was very, so what they labeled themselves as 501c3 organizations that are in fact exempt from open records requests. And I just find that incredibly problematic. This is no different than in California, you have both the California Sheriff's Association, and a large part of not just our unions, but professional organizations that are in fact our 501c3 organizations. And so I've done this where, you try to obtain records from the California Narcotics Officers Association, and they don't give them to you because they're in fact a private corporation. And so you have to figure out how to obtain their tax records, which thank God in California are a matter of public record, and they're posted on a website by law. Their training records. I can go through California Peace Officer Standards and Training to get their training curriculum, but the narcs themselves don't have to give me any of the information. And I think that is probably one of the worst things that we can do from a law enforcement perspective, because what it does is it breeds distrust.
Oh my gosh, you're not kidding. And it makes you wonder what direction that secrecy is going to continue to take, because this isn't. Wow, I'm speechless. Go ahead, Peter. Go with your questions.
When you mentioned that, it reminded me of something that if I was still in a job, I couldn't say this anymore. But when I was a field training officer, when I got done with the training session with the new officer, I'd have him for 4 weeks. One of the last things they hear from me is, and remember one thing, one of the unique things about this job is every time you arrest somebody, you're arresting your boss.
Correct.
Because we work for the people. I guess if I was still on the job, I wouldn't be allowed to say that anymore, right? Because these are private corporations that are doing this stuff. They don't work for the people. They don't have to answer to anybody. And besides that, we're going to give them 007 power, the license to kill, because we allow them to use physical force up to and including deadly physical force to do their job. So we're going to have that group in our society armed and ready. And as Casper mentioned before, not just with handguns, but with tanks and everything else. And they don't have to answer to anybody. I think it's just wonderful.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? And it really calls into question, and it's interesting in Massachusetts, and I'd have to do some research because out here in California, we have multi-agency SWAT teams as well. But they're not incorporated. What happens is they sign memorandums of understanding between cities that describes who's going to fund what, how they're going to work together. And so those, I'm making an assumption, would be clearly a matter of public records. But in Massachusetts, it's not just the SWAT teams that these little corporations also, have. They also have field units that includes computer crime units, a motorcycle unit, a school threat assessment and response system. So that would be, if you have kids that somebody calls and says there's this kid who made a threat, do they respond? In addition to the regional communications and incident management assistant team. What does that mean? And how are these people operating without public accountability? I think that the citizens of Massachusetts should be concerned, angry, and that and I think Massachusetts is different than other states with regard to the Freedom of Information Act or requests. And I'm not normally one to ever call for federal oversight, but maybe in certain cases we do need to have a constitutional standard that every state needs to abide by and operate when it comes to access to law enforcement records.
Absolutely. And the only thing in a free society that you have is transparency. Without that, you can't call yourself a free society anymore. I mean, all they got to do is change the emblems on their things to just two simple little S's, and then they'd have no problem at all, But that isn't what we wanted these things to be. In fact, when we see that in other countries, we call it terrible and wrong. And yet we have it going on right here, and we allow it supposedly legally. This has not been tried in court yet, right?
No, but the good news is the ACLU has, in fact, filed a lawsuit against them.
Right.
And rightfully so. So I think that this is going to be a case that we can all follow for, the next year or so as it wends its way through the system. And I would believe that what will happen is that the courts themselves will come down on the case of absolutely the public has a right to this type of information. Because, it's one of those things, it's like, so a SWAT team goes out, they serve a narcotic search warrant, they kill someone. So could they shield that deployment of that SWAT team in that criminal investigation?
Right.
There's all sorts of different, and I'm not saying that that's what they've done, but if you get the wrong chief or the wrong person in charge, maybe they would try that. So there's just too much crossover that leaves me as a constitutional supporter, much more libertarian in my viewpoint on the Constitution. It leaves me very uneasy about we continue to unbalance power in our society and we grant too much power to our government.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mention that, because if the courts keep going that way, who knows, before long, your boss could be telling you what health care you could have.
Yeah, well, God, God, do we have to talk about birth control here? Because, so I'm going to say this because I'm just, I haven't read the whole Hobby Lobby thing, and there's things in it that I don't particularly care for or like. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't deny birth control for people. It's just how you access them. And I really believe that, birth control should be over the counter, and all you should need is a physician recommendation who tells you what you should try, and it should be readily available. The only reason birth control is by prescription is because of government overregulation.
Absolutely. In fact, it's interesting because one of the most feared treatments or pills in that area is the morning after pill. That's the one that the other side doesn't want at all. And
Sure.
that one is legal in America. All you got to do is be 17 years old. You don't need a prescription. You can just go up to the counter and buy it if you want to.
Correct.
So,
and that's the interesting part. That's what people are forgetting in this debate at this point. So what the Hobby Lobby owners basically stated was we don't believe that we should give our employees the morning after pill. What we believe in is they have the ability to go access it on their own. So, and like everything else, I think that and the Hobby Lobby insurance actually supplied over 16 forms of birth control.
Uh-huh.
So they were just limited on certain, but anyway, we're off the topic. This is the whole.
We're going to take a commercial break.
About prohibition.
We're going to take a commercial break, and it's true. I think it's insane for any corporation to think that they're going to have happy workers whose only form of birth control is abstinence. I mean, think of all the crabby people clocking in that day, right? Hello. We're coming back here after this break. Time for hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
If you are in the Portland, Oregon area and are an OMMP cardholder, then come down to Nikki's Diggity Dank Market, Portland, Oregon's first and only weekly OMMP market, presented by the Alternative Wellness Center, located at 5241 Southeast 72nd Avenue, 2 blocks south of Foster Boulevard, close to public transportation, held every Sunday 10 a.m. till 7 p.m., connecting quality vendors with patients. Nikki's Diggity Dank Market also has a weekly raffle with products from every vendor. So come down to Nikki's Diggity Dank Market and have fun while connecting with quality vendors and getting great natural medicine. If you are a vendor and want a chance to connect with OMMP patients, you can check out their Facebook page at facebook.com/Alternative Wellness Center or call 971-888-4392. Be sure to register early because space is limited. Nikki's Diggity Dank Market.
In need of a ganja vacation? Blaze away.
Don't criticize it.
Hotbox Jamaica. Chill. Relax and burn all day while watching the amazing ocean view. Listen to the birds. Bathe in the mineral waters of the Ganja River. Munch on tasty Jamaican Rasta food. Take a weed farm tour and hold a meditation. Book this amazing vacation for $420. Get the Sativa Special. 7 nights in Sativa dorms with ganja meals and airport transfer. Check us out at hotboxjamaica.com. That's hotboxjamaica.com. Hotbox Jamaica, a higher meditation vacation.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com. Or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
Free? Did you say free? Free hemp? Free hemp? Free hemp video and audio? Free downloads of all the top artists, all the pot artists on planet Earth? Interviews with all the people making the movement, making the hemp movement. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp.
Well, now, chocolate cake makes my poor stomach ache, and all those pills are too much for me to take. I don't like cocaine 'cause it makes me all uptight, but coffee and reefer makes me feel alright. Crystal meth will make you high. and it's cheap.
Yeah, baby, coffee and reefer does make me feel all right. First thing I do when I roll out of the rack in the morning is grab myself a big old cup of Joe, and then Joe gets dressed and goes to work. Then I make myself a pot of coffee and get busy in front of the computer smoking a bowl, trying to end prohibition all around the world. You too needs to be active. Please get up off that couch and get busy making the world a better place. Coffee and reefer, what a nice combination. I'll tell you, as much damage as that can be done to your person from caffeine. I mean, staying busy, getting things done, being productive. You know, next thing you know, they'll be outlawing sugar in New York, saying you can't have big cups of soda, or they'll be outlawing caffeine and coffee somewhere in the United States, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But let's talk about positive stuff for a bit. And this is, outside of just, cannabis law, so to speak. But Michael Botticelli, who's the acting drug czar, recently came out. And it shows, I think, the evolution of our country, that it makes me have hope, even though I don't think they go far enough. But he just said, in response to a law, I believe it was out of Tennessee, that criminalized pregnant women who had substance abuse disorders, he finally came out and said it doesn't seem to serve anyone well to attach criminal penalties to people who have addiction disorders, particularly pregnant women. And so I have this whole theory that surrounds that we as drug policy reformers, and, you really have to thank and give kudos to Peter and Jack for having the foresight to create this great organization that set the message, that talked about prohibition was the evil portion of the law. It wasn't about drug use or drug abuse or advocating for drug use, is that the law itself is a human rights issue. And I think that people in across America are recognizing that. And I think even now some of our political leaders are starting to understand that. I mean, even Bill Clinton this last week came out and said, I think there's a lot of evidence to argue for medical marijuana. And that states should be allowed to do a state-by-state solution to what their drug policy is.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you mention the human rights issue, we've been having that discussion within LEAP. And that's what this organization always was in my mind when I first thought of it, is about human rights. This has nothing even to do with drugs. This has got to do with what kind of law you're going to put armed, and currently in America, militarized police on the streets of your community. You have to be very careful about what you tell them you want them to do.
Yeah.
And if you put them out there to protect people from other people doing them harm, which, by the way, is a human rights issue, protecting people's human rights from other people violating them, when you put people out there to do that, that's one thing. When you put people out there to enforce a morality code that somebody has chosen, I always tell people, if you're going to enforce morality, there's a big question you have to ask yourself first, and that is, whose morality are you going to enforce?
Yeah.
Because everybody's got the Catholic Church has a view of morality. All the different Protestant religions have different views of morality. Now, which one are you going to pick and say everybody should live by? And basically, I say that's not a function of law enforcement. That's a function of family, church, education, and the healthcare system, not the criminal justice system.
Yep. Completely agree.
Yeah, and it's and we're going to be discussing that more when we get done with this show at the meeting, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. But you know what? I think that's important is that, and it's interesting. Is I think that we've crafted and shaped the message, but we've done our job so well that the prohibitionists, so to speak, at this point have adopted our language, and we have to be really cognizant about being able to debunk their gentler, kinder prohibition. You know, it's like Kevin Sabet always talks about how he doesn't believe in collateral consequences, yet, you know, he won't support legalization. He won't support even a system like Portugal, you know, and so we do need to be honest and open. And probably my only issue was sometimes with cannabis exceptionalism, I guess maybe the best way to describe it, is that we do need to address that there are some harms to marijuana, you know, and we need to do a better job of supporting that. Yes, there's some harms to marijuana. It's different than other drugs, but marijuana proponents don't talk about those harms to kids as much. And I think we need to grab that message and say, we need to do a better job in educating our kids that they shouldn't engage in any drug or substance use until they're old enough to understand the risks to it. We need to adopt harm reduction in our discussion about how our kids use marijuana.
And we also have to give our children, I think, a lot more credit than we do for their level of intelligence. And it's interesting, and I mention this often, at Rotary clubs, a lot of times I'll have foreign exchange students from different countries at the Rotary Club. And I've asked this question 10 times, and they've been always of students that were from Western European countries. And what I asked them is, when they came to America, what did they find was the oddest thing about the high school seniors that they were now going to school with, the Americans?
Yep.
And 7 out of 10 times I got the answer, the way they drink. Now, not that they drink, but these people come from Portugal, France, Spain, where they don't have a drinking age, or they can whatever. They're drinking since they're little kids, you know, at dinner table, a little wine with it. They don't know the concept of going out on Friday night to get drunk, but going out on Friday night to have a few drinks and have a party, that's one thing. But when they get to America, our youth talk about getting hammered, getting drunk. And that's because we have raised the drinking age to 21, and we pretend like these 18, 19, and 20-year-olds are not adults. I got some shocking news for you. If they're old enough to die in war and vote, they are adults.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and so it's. I think what we need to do is we need to defang the scare message, which Sabet uses, which is, you know, literally around marijuana, is that we have more kids who are currently have been admitted for marijuana than any other drug combined, including alcohol. And that may be the case, and we shouldn't minimize the harms of marijuana to our children, but we should also point out the fallacies that one of the reasons that they are there is because they've come in contact with zero tolerance policies, whether it's law enforcement or school, that forces these kids to go in there, and they're forced to admit to being drug addicts simply because they've tried marijuana or they've tried other drugs.
Here, we're getting out of the last couple of minutes, and here is a news headline straight off of the internet. Huffington Post: welfare drug testing takes effect in Tennessee. Poor people in Tennessee had better get ready to forfeit body fluids if they want welfare benefits. A new law taking effect this week allows the State Department of Human Services to screen applicants to the Federal Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, known in Tennessee as Families First. The testing regime is not as harsh as the one of Florida, famously deemed unconstitutional by federal courts in 2011, and thus fall within the guidelines of the law. Isn't that nice?
You know, zero tolerance. And you know what I'm going to say to that one? And I'm sorry, Peter. Is, you know, law enforcement if you look around the country, people make this false assumption that there's random drug testing for public safety professionals. And there isn't unless you have negotiated it through a memorandum of understanding. So in the city of Redondo Beach, our union has fought for years. We will never allow our members to be drug tested randomly. We will only allow it upon proof of probable cause. So you come in and you smell like alcohol or pot, or you're slurring your words, or you get involved in an officer-involved shooting, or you get involved in some type of fatal accident. So outside of those very limited parameters is law enforcement fights against mandatory drug testing. And yet, you know, you hear conservatives and cops and all these people screaming to test the poor people because we don't want our taxpayer dollars to go to someone for aid for food or housing. It appalls me. It absolutely appalls me. I will only support drug testing when every congressperson, every political legislator, and every city official, and every police officer agrees to give up their pee.
You know, it's interesting because I often tell people that what you have to understand about liberty is if I don't protect yours to do things that I don't like you doing, then there's a good chance people can take away my right to do the things I want to do. And you do this, you fight for other people, even if you don't agree with them, simply because you want to keep the right to be yourself, to be free there. Do you have anything you want to plug real quick before we end that you got coming up out there, Diane?
You know what? Yeah, there's in California, down in LA, there's going to be a cannabis industry conference called Ideas to, I can't even remember the name of it, in Los Angeles, coming up on July 25th. I will be there, as will other drug policy reform organizations talking about the future of cannabis in California. So it actually appears that in California we may have a regulatory process in place. I'm not certain how happy I am by it because there's some holes to it. But for those that want to support us, join the Coalition for Cannabis Policy Reform, and of course become a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. You can find us at www.leap.cc.
Thank you very much, Dan, for being a guest today. And I'll end up with saying leap.cc. And I want to remind everybody, take a look at the first page. There's a thing on there that we're promoting, and that's for people to tell their stories about their involvement in the drug war and what has happened to them. If you got a story to tell, you might want to submit it to LEAP, and we're trying to get a whole file of them together. And I will end, as I always do, with this little phrase, and that is, bad things continue to happen because good people stay silent. Casper?
Man, you're right, Peter, and good golly, let me remind people that we are an expanding network, forever growing. Again, we got Muck Sticky joining the network in a couple of weeks. Joe Grumbine begins his program in another week or so. We just added the Japanese version of Time for Hemp this week. Doug McVeigh and Kevin Zeese began their programs last week. Drew West began his program this morning and becomes a regular on the network next Tuesday, and the list will continue to grow and grow and grow. And that's because Time for Hemp is like a good joint, always best when shared with your friends.
Thank you, guys. Hey, Peter.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all